Welcome to VidSet. I'm Dr. Ted Noel. Today, our broadcast is going to be a little bit different than usual because Houston is getting hammered by Hurricane Harvey. At present, there have been more than 4 feet of rain fall on the Houston area. That's not 4 feet of flooding, that's 4 feet of rain that gathers together to form many feet of flooding. This is a disaster beyond anyone's comprehension. Now, and it's being called a 500-year flood. The only problem is there have been 3 500-year floods in the last decade. We had them in 2009, 2015, and now with Hurricane Harvey. So maybe there's something else going on here. In the meantime, we have to see what can we do to help out. And frankly, there are a whole lot of things that have to happen. A lot of local agencies are involved and a lot of relief agencies. We have the Cajun Navy has come over from Louisiana to rescue people in spite of being shot at by looters. And the people we need to deal with are the ones who are closest to people. Federal government can do some things, but really what we need to do is get people who can be close to the people in need and can be there on the ground for a long time, and money is the most efficient way to handle this. Some of the outfits I've checked on are the St. Bernard Project, Samaritan's Purse, Save the Children, Global Giving, Convoy of Hope, the Houston Food Bank, and the Food Bank of Corpus Christi. Every one of these charitable organizations spends almost all of its money on the charity and very little on overhead. So those are the people we need to be helping. Now, the question that arises is, why is Houston flooding so badly? Now, granted, this is an incredible storm, and no matter what you do, Houston is going to flood, and it's going to be bad. But there are some things that make it worse. First of all, Houston is very low-lying and it's flat. It also sits on a clay-type soil base, which means water doesn't soak in. It runs off, and where you have lots of concrete, it runs off worse. And so all of those 4 feet of rain now becomes 8, 10, 15, 20 feet of flooding very easily, very quickly. The second thing that's going on has to do with the fact that over the last 20 years, people coming from states that punish entrepreneurs like California and New York and Illinois are now moving into Texas. Houston is a very popular destination. And in the process of this building boom, 38,000 acres of wetland have been wiped out. Now, wetland serves as a sponge to soak up heavy rains so that when you have a big storm, a large part of that storm runs off into the wetlands and doesn't affect the mainland, the drier, higher land. Now, once again, Hurricane Harvey is a massive, horrendous storm. It wouldn't fix everything, but still the wetlands have been wiped away in many areas, and that makes the flooding worse. Now, simple rain is not the usual effect of a hurricane. Hurricane Katrina showed us that what happens with wind is also a big problem, but rain was a problem. They had a tidal surge in Hurricane Katrina that ended up breaching the levee and flooding the Ninth Ward. Now, with tidal surges, we have natural barriers to help protect the mainland. They're called barrier islands. One of them in the Houston area is called Galveston Island. The city of Galveston was wiped out in 1900 by a tidal surge that just simply ran across Galveston Island with a big hurricane. And if there had been nobody living on Galveston Island, no problem. The barrier island protected a lot of the mainland. Now, if we look again, other places, South Florida, for example, you can see long lines of barrier islands. And when big hurricanes like Hurricane Charlie came through, we see how North Captiva Island, look in the red circle, was cut in two by the hurricane. That's normal for barrier islands. You see, barrier islands are big sandbars. And as sandbars, they get new sand deposited, they get sand washed away, they get moved around, they get cut up. And as long as nobody's living on them, nobody's building on them, that's the natural way that nature protects the further inland structures, the mainland. And these barrier islands are just like a fence out there that protects against the storm. But in Captiva, we saw there was a settlement on the north end of the town or the island, and it was damaged badly. As we look at Houston, Galveston, those get damaged badly. And so anytime you now build on the barrier islands, you have a problem. Well, under normal circumstances, building on the barrier island would be considered very risky, and insurance companies would write a very high price for insurance. But in 1968, under Lyndon Johnson, the National Flood Insurance Program was established. This was a subsidy, straight out, to people who wanted to build on the barrier islands. They wanted to build a place where you could look right at the beach and look at the surf and be all happy. You didn't want to just drive out there and visit. They wanted to live there. Well, with the National Flood Insurance Program, all of a sudden we see what is so common in Florida. You have all of these high-rise condos and homes right on the beach, right in the path of the storm. And then after storms, oh my goodness, all this beach erosion, it wiped out these homes, we got to get rid of them. With the flood insurance program, we've subsidized bad behavior. Well, 4 years ago, in 2012, we had a bill passed. It's called the Biggert Waters, that's Maxine Waters of all people, Insurance Reform Act of 2012. And the idea was it would phase out subsidies. What we had been doing was taking taxpayer money, people who couldn't afford to live on the beach, giving it to people who wanted to live on the beach to protect their big investments. We were protecting rich people at the expense of poor people. And so we got all of these other structures so that in every big storm, the federal government was paying out. So the idea was over 4 years, we were going to phase out all the subsidies. Well, as people started to see how big the subsidies were, obviously the screaming has started, and the phase out hasn't finished. So this is a lesson to us that says we need to get rid of the subsidies. There's no purpose for it. And you would think conservation groups like the Sierra Club and so on would be very happy to support legislation that would get rid of the subsidies. For some reason, they're not doing that, and it's hard to figure out. But politics does make strange bedfellows. In any case, we need to get rid of those subsidies. Back to Houston, would that have eliminated the damage in Houston? No way, no how. The storm is just way, way too big. There are natural disasters that nothing we do can prepare us for, and nothing we do can mitigate all of the loss. But it would have reduced some of the loss in Houston. And as we look forward to the next storm, the next Superstorm Sandy, the next Hurricane Katrina, the next Hurricane Andrew, whichever one it might be, Hurricane Charlie, which cut North Captiva Island in half, the next storm should not be a drain on the taxpayers' wallets to rich people who built on the beach. It needs to be they carry their own weight, and if they want to build on the beach, they pay the freight. Ultimately, we would see the beaches returning to the status that comes with Cape Hatteras, where you have the Hatteras National Seashore, and there's no building to speak of out there. And so when the storms come through, you have beaches get moved around, dunes get moved around, but we haven't destroyed a lot of stuff that it gets paid for by the taxpayer. So while we're out helping all of those people in big trouble in Houston, let's take the lesson to the other seashores and cut out the subsidies from the National Flood Insurance Program. I'm Dr. Ted Noel. Thanks for watching.